Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is Monday. I hope you all are doing well. Hope you all have had a fantastic weekend. We are back with the latest Everton news. We're going to discuss a apparent report that Leeds have knocked back an approach from Everton for forward Wilfried Gnonto. We're also going to discuss Demarai Gray and potential interest from Crystal Palace around the Jamaican forward. We're also going to talk a little bit about Jordan Pickford, who has been talking about his Everton teammate Dele and the recent interview that Dele gave with Gary Neville and the impact that has had. And Jordan has also been talking about his future and wanting to remain at Everton Football Club. So lots to get into in regards to rumours and reports. Not a lot to get into in regards to any real sort of serious transfer news or rumours or anything other than just paper talk at the moment, which is massively disappointing because it's much nicer and much better to come on these live streams and talk about Everton being heavily linked with this forward or heavily linked with that forward or about to sign this player or about to sign that player. Even last week was just a nicer week, even though, we all know the signing of Ashley Young wasn't particularly exciting and wasn't particularly enthusiastic. I still think for me it's a good signing, as I mentioned in the announcement video that we did. But even though that wasn't particularly the most enthusiastic signing or the most exciting signing in the world, I still felt somewhat joyful sitting down and actually talking about a player that was set to sign for Everton and looking into, their last couple of seasons and how well they did and what they could bring to Everton and how exciting it is that Everton have got a new signing, etc., etc. It's always much more exciting talking about players that, are likely to come through the door as opposed to just sort of, regular transfer rumours and reports in newspapers and online that are probably, just a load of paper talk. And there's probably nothing in them whatsoever, but that's where we are with Everton at this moment, and that's where we've been for a number of weeks, as I said, except that, that week last week when we announced Ashley Young, and obviously that sort of transfer started to come about. Other than that, we've not really hit anything. We've been linked with, again, about 420,000 players over the last few weeks or so, but none of them have been anything other than just Everton are interested in, Everton have, an eye on, Everton have renewed their interest in X, Y, and Z. There's never been anything sort of solid. There's never been anything that has gone beyond an interest point of view. And when we have had rumours about apparent bids, whether it be for Wilfried Gnonto, whether it be for Anthony Elanga, those reports and rumours have been knocked back pretty much instantly by the football club to suggest that there hasn't been a bid for any player submitted, and there is interest in certain players. But as of now, there hasn't been any bids tabled for anybody. So, yeah, a little bit boring. We are at the 17th of July, less than a calendar month away from the start of the Premier League season. Everton, of course, playing Fulham on the opening day of the season. Am I slightly worried that Everton have only got one addition to the squad? A little bit. Obviously, we know the first team played their first pre-season friendly of the season against Stade Lyonnais on Friday evening, a 2-1 win for Everton in that game, and I want to say an impressive run out, but it wasn't really, was it? It was what you would expect from a pre-season game. It was, players that hadn't played football for a long time, certainly hadn't played a game of 11-a-side football for 90 minutes. It was slow. It was lethargic. I remember looking up at the clock and it was 33 minutes gone of the first half, and I felt like I'd been watching the game for about 10 years. We did win the game, which is good. And listen, I'm not moaning, I'm not complaining. I fully understand that pre-season is, about getting minutes in the legs and having a look at the players and the players' fitness levels, etc., etc. And I was never expecting to watch that game on Friday evening and be completely enthralled by the quality that we were seeing or be completely entertained by it. So I'm not, by any sense of the imagination, sitting here complaining. Good goal from the youngster Chiarte, who, of course, took it really, really well, took it down well, and then blasted it into the top corner as well. He looked good. he looked impressive. He looked sharp. He looked like he wanted to get about the pitch. Ultimately the difference between being able to put that performance in the first week of pre-season and being good enough to play in the Premier League is massively different. So whether or not anything comes of that, we'll wait and see. Neil Maupay obviously scored in the ultimate winner with a penalty. Their goal was a good tidy finish as well. As for being impressed by players on show, I thought Lewis Warrington was busy. Thought a couple of the other young lads were busy. As I said, Kouyaté was busy other than his goal, as well as his goal, sorry. Other than that, Dwight McNeil looked alright. A couple of good moments with his feet, a couple of good bits of play. Tom Cannon missed a couple of opportunities that, if people genuinely believe he's good enough to play in the Premier League, which I'm not just plucking that out of thin air. Towards the back end of last season, we were hearing genuine, shouts for Tom Cannon to be involved and why Tom Cannon should be involved ahead of Neil Maupay, etc., etc. For me, I think, again, with the context of it just being a pre-season game and fitness and, the result and the performance not really being the main goal, even with all that to take into consideration, I still think we saw why Tom Cannon is probably not ready yet to be challenged in the Premier League. But, again, he might have just had one of them where he misses a couple of chances, and ultimately it might just be because of the fatigue and the first game back. But, yeah, again, you would have liked to have come home from that trip in Switzerland. Well, really, we would have liked to have gone out to the Switzerland trip with a couple of new signings at the very least. Obviously, Ashley Young joined the squad during the week, but obviously never featured in that game on Friday. But ideally we would have liked to have seen 2 or 3 new faces in that, on that trip, and 2 or 3 new faces, making their debuts on Friday evening. But of course that wasn't to be the case, and if that isn't possible, then you would have at least liked to have seen a couple of new faces in the football club, this week, to start the pre-season again back over here, and obviously be available for those games against Wigan and Bolton and Stoke, etc., etc. But at this point, it doesn't look like that's anywhere close to happening either. Let's get into the latest rumours then. Apparently, according to Phil Hay of I believe he works for The Athletic. He's a Leeds United writer for The Athletic. He has stated that Leeds have already knocked back an approach from Everton for Wilfried Gnonto and will try to resist future contact about him. Sources close to discussions have denied a bid was made. Everton's interest was quickly rebuffed. Leeds value Gnonto in excess of £50 million, and that comes after a report yesterday from the Mail Online stating that Leeds United have rejected a £50 million bid from Everton for Wilfried Gnonto, and it also stated Leeds have no interest in selling Gnonto. And Sports Pete O'Rourke also reported yesterday that Everton will have to pay around £20 million for Wilfried Gnonto if they are wanting to sign him. Sky Italia reported on the weekend that Everton are close to signing Wilfried Gnonto. We had another couple of reports. I think Sasha Tavoleri, who is a Belgium journalist, he reported that Everton were close to signing Wilfried Gnonto as well. And obviously, as we've heard from Phil Hay at The Athletic, who is probably the most reliable source that we've heard from regarding the Wilfried Gnonto saga, he has stated that no official bid has been made. Sources close to the club or sources close to the discussions have denied a bid has been made, and Leeds have knocked back an approach and will try to resist future contact about Gnonto. So it seems like Leeds United are going to want quite a hefty sum if they're going to allow Gnonto to leave the football club. Now, Leeds do need to recoup some money into their squad. Obviously, they've got that parachute payment that they'll have got from being relegated, and that will help them, massively in the transfer market. But when you look at the other teams around them, Leicester City have made some money back on the likes of James Maddison. They'll make it back on Harvey Barnes as well. Southampton are very likely to lose a couple of their players. James Ward-Prowse, I still think, will leave before the end of the transfer window, so they'll make some money back on their squad as well. And Leeds United may have to sell a couple of their sort of, better players in order to be able to sort of put them in a financial position where they're able to compete next season in the Championship. Now, they've let a couple of players go from what I'm aware, Leeds, but nobody have, nothing of any real sort of significance. Obviously, Rodrigo has gone over to the Middle East, which, again, you could say is significant, but is only gone for a couple of £1 million, so financially it isn't too big of a deal. It seems like Leeds are pretty, assured in their feelings and pretty confident in their ability to keep Wilfried Gnonto at the football club. Now, obviously, a lot of this decision will be down to the player himself, and we haven't heard an awful lot of reports about the player and what the player would like and whether the player would want to move or whether the player would be happy to stay at Leeds. I think if Wilfried Gnonto was to come out now and say that he'd be happy to stay at Leeds United and he's not in any real rush to leave that football club, I think that Wilfried Gnonto would stay at Leeds, because I think Leeds United would ultimately say, right, okay, that's good for us. The money that they would then want for him would be a ridiculous amount and an amount that you probably wouldn't get, and therefore he'd end up staying at Leeds. But obviously that dynamic changes if the player comes out and ultimately says, no, I want to be going to play in the Premier League. I'm sort of I want to say an Italian international, because he is, and he's featured in those Italian sides, but he's certainly on the brink of becoming a regular for his country. And if he ultimately wants that to continue, then the reality of the situation is he needs to be playing in one of the top leagues in Europe, and the Championship, when he's got to move to the Premier League, probably doesn't make much sense for him. And if he does come out and admit that he wants to leave Leeds United and inform Leeds United, then maybe this situation becomes a little bit easier. As of the fee, as we stated there, Phil Hay reporting that there hasn't been a bid made for Gnonto, and Leeds United would want in excess of £15 million. That was after reports that Everton had a £15 million bid rejected. Maybe that report about the bid being rejected has just come from the fact that somebody has got a hold of the news that Leeds United would want in excess of £15 million. So a journalist somewhere has decided to state that Everton have bid that and it is being rejected. I don't know. But again, nothing really seems to be moving with this one. It was Sky Italia that reported over the weekend that Everton were close to signing Wilfried Gnonto, and a couple of other reports on social media reported it wasn't Sacha Tavaleri, it was one of the other journalists reported that Everton were in the final stages of that deal. Obviously, those reports were, I was about to say very premature, but they just were not true whatsoever, clearly, because there's not even been a bid made, never mind a bid accepted or anything else accepted to get to the final stages of a deal. So yeah, we very much are still in the same position now as we were 2 weeks ago with Wilfried Gnonto. And we've spoken about him countless amounts of times in that period of time. And that is because it seems like every day we're getting more news surrounding this, but it's just the same news being recycled. Everton interested in the player. Leeds don't want to sell the player. Leeds would want in excess of this amount. Everton have made a bid. Oh, no, actually, Everton haven't made the bid. Oh, Everton's imaginary bid, if they have made it, is being rejected, but they haven't made it. It all just seems like it's just the same news being recycled day in, day out about Gnonto. Look, ultimately, I do think he will leave Leeds this summer, because I think he will understand that if he wants to continue to be in the eyes of the Italian national setup, then he will have to be playing in one of the top leagues. Ultimately, his chances of getting in that Italy team are massively decreased if he stays at Leeds United in the Championship. Whether or not that means he will come to Everton is a completely different question. We've obviously seen a couple of these situations in recent years with the likes of Mohamed Kudus and Luis Diaz, who were all on the brink of signing for Everton and one step away from signing for Everton, and then ultimately neither player ended up signing. So whether or not Gnonto does sign or whether or not he goes to another football club, I'm not quite sure. But again, everything seems to be happening, but nothing seems to be happening with this transfer. The latest is coming from a very, very reliable source in The Athletic, who probably are one of the most reliable sources you can get out there. And they're reporting that no bid is being made and Leeds United will attempt to resist future contact about Gnonto, and they want in excess of £15 million. So that ultimately is where we stand on the Gnonto situation. Leeds United want more than what Everton are probably willing to pay. Certainly what Everton are willing to pay up front. I can't see Everton being able to pay more than £50 million up front. And I can't really see Leeds being happy to make that deal at, a structure over a number of years, unless Everton pay an extortionate amount and then make it a structured deal. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, for me, I think what's important is the football club doesn't dwell on this, and the football club ultimately doesn't sit on this and sort of sit on the hope that Leeds United will just wake up one day and go, actually, do you know what? Yeah, we will sell him for what you want him for, and we'll allow him to leave. Ultimately, Everton have to say to Leeds, right, this is our offer, this is how we want it structured, yes or no. And if Leeds United say no, sound, we move on to the next target. We can't afford to be sitting here for another 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks trying to pursue a player that is not coming to Everton for whatever reason, whether it be because Leeds United don't want to sell him, whether it be because we can't afford him, whether it be because the player doesn't want to come, whatever it may be. I'm not particularly interested in the reason, but what I'm interested in is Everton putting their cards on the table and saying, this is our offer, this is what we're willing to pay. Can you work with that? If Leeds United say yes, okay, let's try and make a deal happen. If Leeds United say no, then let's not sit here and go, well, we'll come back in a week's time and they may have changed their mind. No, just move on to the next target. We've done this far too many times in the past where we've, sort of sat on a player transfer under the assumption and the hope that the player will ultimately end up signing for Everton, and then 5, 6, 7 weeks down the line, when the player hasn't signed for Everton and he's signed for somebody else and we've been forced to move on, it's been too little too late and we haven't been able to go and get a replacement in. The Danjuma situation in January is the perfect example of that. Now, I understand Danjuma was virtually in the door and he did a U-turn himself after doing his medical and whatever else was reported at the time, but the reality is we sat on that and under the thought and the assumption that we've got this player, so we don't need to go and get another one in. And then when Danjuma obviously ultimately didn't come, we weren't able to turn to anybody else. And obviously Danjuma was an anomaly because he seemed very much like he was joining Everton. But we've done it over the years with numerous players where we've pursued a player for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks after it's become quite apparent that he won't be coming to Everton, and then when that deal hasn't happened, we've not been able to go out and get somebody else because we've left ourselves with too little time. So for me, I'm getting bored of the Gnonto stuff now. I really, really am getting bored of the Gnonto stuff. I mean, I heard a couple of people who were sort of snarling at the idea. When I say I heard, I mean I've seen a couple of people on social media who were snarling at the idea of bringing Anthony Elanga to the football club. And don't get me wrong, I'm not massively excited by Anthony Elanga coming into Everton. And by all reports, it looks like he won't be, as we'll talk about in a moment. But Anthony Elanga, didn't have a great season last season. He wasn't massively involved because he hasn't massively been involved since Ten Hag has been at Manchester United. But are we forgetting that Gnonto only scored a couple of goals last season? Yes, he looks good. Yes, he's young. Yes, he's breaking in and he'd be a good signing for the future. But he's not a 35 goal a season player who Everton have got a chance of getting. He scored a few goals last season and there's no guarantee that he'll become even better this season. So for me, as I said, I'm getting bored of this now. And if Leeds are playing hard to get and the player himself isn't willing to sort of try and force a move through, if Gnonto's sitting there going, do you know what, I'm not really bothered about going to Everton, I'll stay at Leeds, or I'll go to somewhere else, where I can play European football or whatever, in maybe Italy or Germany, wherever, then just move away from it and go and pursue somebody else and go and actually bring in a forward. I would rather us go and bring in, I don't know, let's just say for argument's sake, Danjuma, Elanga by next Friday, than sit for another 4 weeks on a 50% chance, 40% chance that we might sign Wilfried Gnonto. We can't afford to do that. We simply can't afford to do that. We cannot afford to get this transfer window wrong. We survived last season, and I know you all know this, and I know you all don't need lecturing, and I know I've said this numerous times before, but I feel like it needs to be said again. We survived last season with 20 minutes to go? With 20 minutes to go, half an hour to go, we were relegated. Abdoulaye Doucouré steps up, he scores a worldie, we end up surviving. But with half an hour to go of a Premier League season, of a 9-month season, with half an hour to go of that season, Everton were down. And the reason for that was because of the failures of this football club, and one of the biggest reasons for that was because we failed in the last 2 transfer markets, massively so in January. We can't afford to do that again. We simply can't. And if the Gnonto situation is dragging on and Leeds are, playing hard to get, etc., etc., move on. Move on to somebody else. And maybe the club are doing that. Maybe this is all just paper talk. Maybe this is all just Gnonto's agent trying to get his name out there and throwing Everton's name in the hat to try and sort of hype up the position of his player. I don't know, but hopefully Everton can either get a deal done for Gnonto or move away from it, because it's getting boring now. It really, really is. In regards to Anthony Elanga, the Mail have reported today that Anthony Elanga has decided on his next club. It is thought to be unlikely that it will be Everton. We did hear some reports. I've heard some reports over the last couple of weeks or so that Anthony Elanga preferred to move abroad than staying in England. I heard those reports actually when Everton was said to have bid for Anthony Elanga, another bid that never actually happened, but we were told happened. That was when I was hearing that Elanga doesn't actually want to stay in England and he'd rather move abroad. So this isn't particularly a shock that his next move is unlikely to be Everton. Would I have taken him? Yes, I would. I think he's quick. I think he's bright. I think he's young. He is young. He's quick. He's bright. He's fast. He's capable. He's technically a good player. A little bit lost at Manchester United, but that's not the end of the world. A lot of young players can get lost at a club the size of Manchester United. I think he ultimately would have been a good addition to this squad. He improves the football club. He gets in the starting 11. However, having said that, I'm not overly upset or frustrated or angry that this deal isn't happening. I think there's better players out there than Anthony Elanga that Everton could sign for cheaper, and that's where Everton should be looking. Now, there'll be players in Germany, there'll be players in France, there'll be players in this country, there'll be players in the Championship that could come in and have a similar impact, if not a better impact, than what Anthony Elanga would have on Everton. And that's where Everton should be focusing their attention on now. Again, another situation where we should look at it and think, well, what's the reality of the situation? Anthony Elanga turns around and goes, no, I don't want to go to Everton. Sound, we're not even going to think about you anymore. We'll walk away and we'll look somewhere else. There's no point in wasting any more time on these. As far as I'm concerned, for me, the Elanga situation's done, because he's apparently, according to the Mail, he's made his decision and that isn't Everton. So sound, walk away. The Gnonto situation, if I was Everton, I'd be going to Leeds over the next week and saying, listen, can we make a deal happen? This is what we have got. This is our financial position. This is how much we can spend now. This is how much we can give you over 3 years, 4 years, etc., etc. This is how much we can give you up front. And if Leeds say, no, not interested in that, sound, nice one, walk away, move on to someone else. Wilfried Gnonto isn't the only forward in the world that Everton could sign that comes in and improves us. But what he is young and played in the Premier League. So that's where all the attention is. But that isn't necessarily the only thing that Everton need. That's not necessarily the deciding factor. He's played in the Premier League. And what? Had Mahrez played in the Premier League before he went to Leicester? No. Had Kante? No. Had some of the better players in the world played in the Premier League before they went to, Man City. I know Haaland is a completely different level, but he'd not played in the Premier League? No. So, again, look at some of the great Everton players of the past. Had Mikel Arteta played in the Premier League before he come? No. Pardon me. Had Tim Cahill? No. So, again, for me, we have to be able to understand if these deals aren't going to happen, and if they're not going to happen, move on from them. Oh, I've got a tickly throat. I do apologise. But yeah, again, it appears like Anthony Elanga will be moving elsewhere, or certainly according to reports. The Mail also reported that Crystal Palace are stepping up their interest in Demarai Gray. Gray is ready for a fresh start after growing frustrated with his lack of first-team opportunities at the end of last season. I'm not quite sure why he was frustrated with his lack of opportunities. The reality of the situation was Dwight McNeil was ultimately performing much better. than Demarai Gray was, and Alex Iwobi ultimately offers us more. I know some people don't agree with that, but it's just the truth. But again, for me, I'd have no real issue selling Demarai Gray for the right price. Whether or not Crystal Palace are willing to pay the right price, it remains to be seen. I think what we have to be careful of is not selling all of our players and not replacing them. Demarai Gray ultimately is somebody that I would be open to selling, and obviously when the reports about Saudi being interested in him, I sat down on a video and said, take the money if it's there. But ultimately we have to be careful with that as well, and we have to understand that we can only sell if we are able to then replace. And as much as Demarai Gray isn't brilliant, as much as Demarai Gray is inconsistent, as much as Demarai Gray is frustrating, etc., he is a goal scorer, and he scored goals in the Premier League for Everton last season. And if we're going to lose that, then it's imperative that we replace him with somebody that will score goals in the Premier League for Everton next season. And when I sit here and say Everton need a striker, and Everton need a winger, and Everton need an attacking midfielder, and Everton need probably another winger, I'm talking from the current squad now, so that would be on top of Demarai Gray. So if we were to lose Demarai Gray, I think we'd need 2 wingers and 2 strikers. So you always have to think about it like that. Obviously, if a bid comes in from Crystal Palace, that is, an offer that Everton simply can't refuse. For me, anything upwards of £15 million, I'd be taking it all day long. But we can't just say, oh yeah, he's shite, he's inconsistent, sell him, because we're going to have to then replace him. Jordan Pickford has been discussing the interview that Dele gave, as well as the season ahead and the arrival of Ashley Young. He said, hopefully all the players and staff around the club can help him get back to the form he was at Spurs. Talking about Dele there. Again, really powerful interview that we spoke about on Friday afternoon from Dele surrounding the issues that he has had to cope with over the last few years or so. Jordan was also asked if he will still be at Everton next season. He said, definitely, I've just signed a new contract and I'm happy and my family is happy, so now we just want to move forward as a club. Brilliant to hear that from Jordan, obviously understanding that we live in a world in football where things can change overnight, and things can change almost instantly in football. But I genuinely do believe what Jordan says. And his agents come out not so long ago and said if Jordan Pickford is to leave Everton this summer, it won't be because of us. I think he said something along the lines of, we are here until we are told we're not wanted, which is good, and it's positive, because I can't see a world in where Everton would turn around to Jordan Pickford and say, you're not wanted, unless we got an offer of, I don't know, 80, 90, 100 million pound, then yes, it would have to be discussed, but that's very unlikely that we're going to get that, and therefore for me, Jordan stays at the football club. It's very simple. He's happy here. Obviously, he wore the armband a lot last season in the absence of Seamus Coleman, and I think it's fair to say the majority of Evertonians are happy with Jordan Pickford as well. So that is brilliant to hear. A couple of more rumours. Marca reported that there is no agreement between Everton and Almeria for El Bilal Toure, and if they want Toure, they will have to pay close to his €40 million release clause. And Sasha Tavaleri reported that Everton are interested in Union Saint Gilloise striker Victor Boniface. Everton haven't made a bid yet for the 22-year-old Nigerian, but the player is open to a move. Again, more just transfer rumours with no real substance, with nothing really in them other than just Everton are interested in said player. The Bilal Toure stuff, again, quieting down a lot over the last couple of weeks or so. Whether it will happen or not, I'm edging on that, highly doubtful that this deal will happen. Whether anything changes, we'll wait and see. But again, I'm very, very highly doubtful that this will happen. And in regards to Danjuma, apparently AC Milan are interested in him. And we know Danjuma's history of turning around and actually saying, do you know what? I don't want to come to Everton now. I want to go here. So again, we'll wait and see on that one. But Everton have to start acting. And Everton have to start acting quickly. And if these moves for Gnonto and Elanga aren't gonna come to anything, then we have to walk away from them sooner rather than later, because the focus has to change, and we've got to bring players in. We can't sit on our hands and dilly-dally over players that aren't going to come to the football club. It's as simple as that. Anyway, we're going to leave it there. If you have enjoyed this one, please do leave a like. If you're new to the channel, please do subscribe as well. That would mean a massive amount to me. We will be back over the next coming days with another video, so don't forget to look out for that one. But yeah, big thank you all for watching. Leave a like if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe if you are new, and we'll see you soon.